had it plugged in at home.
I should send you the one that I use.
Is it good?
Oh, it's great because you can
that would be my intention for sure.
And broadcast your phone.
Yeah, send me the link of it.
Good morning.
Good morning, Russ.
I mean, it's not your every ordinary day. You just show up to a professional football stadium, have your name on a locker. At least most of us. Sorry, bro. Sorry. We asked you to wear tennis shoes on purpose, mostly because we were not going to give the bus driver directions. So that way we knew you would be able to walk here comfortably to the room. So thank you guys for maneuvering through that. Unfortunately, Amy is out today. She got sick last night in the middle of the night, so let's pray for her that she will recover today and be back. So any snafus that happen, blame it directly on Joey. That's me. Because if any information was passed to me, I deferred it immediately to Joey. But we have a great day planned. For some of you, this is the first time you've come to an event. Raise your hand if this is the first time you've been to one of our Passive Income Mastermind retreats. Amazing. Love that. We started this mastermind a little over 2 years ago. Sharon, Joey, and I put together an event in Nashville, Tennessee. We invited 35 people. I think 32 people came. There's some familiar faces. Love the Vinings that are here. Tyler was one of the original people, a part of that group. And the concept was, how do we get smart people together to share the hundreds, if not thousands, of deals we've all done together so we become better investors. We sharpen each other's financial IQ, and we learn from amazing presenters. So this is just going to be a fun week of us learning and finding ways that we can grow both individually as people, but also in our financial journey to becoming financially free. We judge everything by how much passive income do we have to our monthly expenses. You'll sometimes see people wearing around a 200% shirt. If you're not familiar with what that is, that's our objective. Besides Mark Hargucci, who's shooting for like 500% because he's already blown through 200%. But 200% gets us there, right? If we're only half as good, we're still financially free. If something goes wrong with some of the things that we invest in, some of us have experienced that, we're still there, right? So shooting for that 200% mark. Today, though, we love to bring the members together so that we can go deeper in other areas that maybe we don't focus on in our daily life. And so our first presenter today is going to help us think from the inside, right? From a health perspective. If we can give fully into what we're doing, we can be better husbands, wives, we can be better fathers and mothers, and better friends and better leaders to our teams. And so I've had a chance to get introduced to our speaker today, Justin Roethlisberger. He and his team own it, train professional athletes. They train professional football teams, hockey teams, NBA teams, MLB. They train CEOs of publicly traded companies, like my man Sharon right here. And they train elite sports athletes like myself. But more importantly, they help us understand the things, how to live our life through data and not through gut. So everybody give it up for our speaker today, Justin Roethlisberger.
What's up, champ? Awesome. Can everybody hear me if I talk like this? Yes? Awesome. I don't like to have a mic. I'm a hand talker. So first off, I love this environment. Like, this is where I grew up. This is like my space. Not in a football locker room, hockey locker room, but the energy is the same. And so you're going to notice that I might call on you. You're going to notice that I might ask for some feedback. I encourage you all to engage in that. Engage with me. Play this game that we're going to kind of go through here. And so as we dive in today, you're going to see this word a lot. I'm talking about ownership. What does ownership mean? How do we take ownership of our bodies, our vessels, the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis? So we're not just gaining income, but we're ultimately able to now enjoy that. We're able to enjoy a life that's different than anything else. How many people, and again, a little exercise here, how many people you can stand up left behind a business? Stand up if you did. Stand up. Stay standing. How many people left behind a spouse? Stay standing. How many people left behind children? Almost everybody is up in this room. You can take a seat. What a shame it would be if we left our businesses, our spouses, and our kids at home and we didn't leave here different. What a shame it would be if we left here coming in, meeting all of these great people, having a great experience, but leaving here the same as we came in. The same mindsets, the same thoughts, the same principles, the same parameters, the same way of thinking, the same way of living. I want you to leave here after we're done today, able to live different, elevated, and taking ownership of that and living a different way. And so I want to ask a question. What is performance to you? What does performance mean? Shout out some words. Anybody, it's good.
Success.
Success. Anything else?
Execution.
Execution.
Action.
Action.
Achievement.
Achievement. Results.
Winning.
Winning. Losing. Capacity. Oh. Who said that? Oh, tenacity. Dang it, I ruined the punchline. Tenacity. Tenacity. These are all great. But they're all outcomes. None of them are performance. None of them are performance. And when we look at this, we have to realize that health precedes performance. Health comes first. You can't perform if you're unhealthy. You can't perform. I mean, Amy's a great example. She was all prepared yesterday, but now she's not here. She doesn't have the opportunity to show up. How many people have felt so great, have a massive level of capacity, and all of a sudden notice a capacity drop when you get a cold, when you get a flu? How do we increase capacity? So I came up with this definition. The definition of performance is to have the capacity and desire to intentionally and consistently behave equal to your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional potential. I want to break down two words for you: capacity and desire. Everybody has the desire. Everybody wants the community. Everybody wants to hold a mastermind here. Everybody wants passive income. Everybody wants a great, powerful family. Everybody wants the platform. It's not a desire issue. It's a capacity issue. That's why you're not performing and getting to the outcome that you want. That's why you're operating below your potential. That's why there's this gap that creates this inner disdain, this inner spiritual disruption inside of you constantly, and you have to figure out, man, maybe it's this magic pill. Maybe it's this magic pill. No, friends, it's holistic. It's everything. Notice, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. It is all integrated together, and today we're going to learn why that matters, why that is that way, and how do we get there. The other two words, consistency and intention. That's the way that we create a plan in which we can execute over time, and the outcome becomes inevitable. Yeah? A darker marker? Absolutely. Let's see what they got for me here. I've got a whole book. This is the NFL.
Can you use more X's and O's?
I can. How's that better? Capacity, consistency, intentionality produces an outcome over time. If you do something consistently and intentionally long enough, you're going to win. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. But do you have the capacity to sustain the time it's going to take to get there? And that's the question I want you to answer. That's the question I want you to realize today, that if you are ultimately creating capacity for yourself, you're going to win. It's not a question. That's why you notice some people who perform with a deep level of peace, and some people perform with a deep level of anxiety. Because you have a deep knowing that mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, you are closing your reality to your potential. And so when we lean in, we have to realize that we don't rise to the level of our goals. We all have these desires, but not everybody's getting the outcomes that they want. Why? Because they don't have the systems in place. Show me somebody successful. Show me somebody who's performing at an elite level, and I will show you elite systems. I will show you systems that are different than yours. I will show you systems that work in a different way. Bring up a hockey analogy here. Between the years of 1995 to 2005, there was two teams, the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils. The New York Rangers had a team full of Hall of Fame players. How many times do you think they made the playoffs in that decade? Call it out. Two is correct. Between the same years, 1995 to 2005, you had the New Jersey Devils, the lowest salary cap in the league. Average guys. But they invented a system called the trap. How many times do you think they made the playoffs in that same year? 8. How many times do you think they won the Stanley Cup? 3. And the NHL in 2005 actually had to create a rule that broke up their system. It was that good. And so it goes to show that it goes to show that pristine and elevated systems make average great. And the outcome becomes inevitable. And so, oh, that's good. And so when we come back and we start to think about this, we have to take a look at, oh, good. And then can you just connect my, just go over to the side again. There we go. And then 6-digit code. 35443, connect. Boom, done. We're winning. I think I got it now.
Joey, he has more tabs open on his computer than
I do.
Finally, someone's beating me up.
Is that showing up, Sean?
Is that okay for now? Or do you want me to fix something?
Maybe give me it just disconnected for some reason. All right. Fuck it. I'm going to do this. Maybe just help me move this forward just a smidge. All right. I'm going to operate this way. Cool. All right. So I'm going to put it this way. So over the last 12 years, I was in charge of managing the health, wellness, performance of the best athletes in the world in the NHL. Over that same period of time, I didn't do it for myself. I didn't do it for myself, and I saw my capacity slowly drop. And in 2019, ultimately, physically, looked great, was in great shape, started to not feel well. Saw drops in my energy level, saw drops in my mental clarity, saw drops in how I was feeling overall. Every doctor told me I was healthy, every doctor told me I had everything going on. I knew there was something wrong. Went up to a specialist up in New York City, and ultimately got 2 procedures done. They found 7 polyps the size of my thumb, all precancerous in my colon. Found an ulcer the size of a quarter, also precancerous in my stomach. That didn't happen by accident. I earned that by the way I was living. I earned that through the lack of sleep. I earned that through the massive stress. I learned that through the inability to process what I was thinking. And ultimately what we were learning was that the systems that I had in place for how I was living were below or not optimal for what I was ultimately wanting to perform at. There was a gap that continued to open up. And so that led me to want to ultimately do that for everybody. Wanted to create systems, strategy, and processes to make sure that we could help you operate at a level that would elevate you. And so my question, when you think about performance, when you think about work, what is it that you need to improve? And again, let's just call out some words. What is it that you think you need to improve? There we go. Great. Cardio. Strength. Diet. Discipline. Say that again. Focus. Capacity. I love it. I love it. So yeah, at the end of the day, those are all true. Those are all real. But how do we know? How do we know? So often we get out into this world and it's just, hey, you need to do this. You need to intermittent fast. You need to cold plunge. You need to do zone 2 conditioning. You need to run a marathon. You need to sign up for a race. You need to only eat meat. You need to only eat vegetables. You need to drink 5 gallons of water a day. You need to read 50 books a day. Oh my God. First off, where do I have the time to do this? But what's right? What's wrong? At the end of the day, we have to realize that it's not about what does the collective need, it's what does each and every one of you need, because every single one of you needs something different. What the world has told you is healthy may actually be killing you. And so I want to come back to this area here, this quadrant system. And I want you to think about this for a second, because this might make a lot of sense for a lot of you. If you want to build a family, if you want to get fit, if you want to build a business, you are going to operate in this upper left quadrant. You are going to overreach. You are going to have to take on stress. Stress is positive. We need stress in our life. We need it mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically in order to grow. But if we only ever stay here, it's going to thrust us into this burnout quadrant faster than we can even realize. And the downside is that it ultimately gets to us even before we know it. And that's where 80% of us live, with this massive gap of reality to what potential is. Conversely, the people that have figured it out, the people that have created their own rhythm, realize, yep, I am going to overreach constantly, but I'm going to intentionally and consistently build a system that allows me equal and powerful time in that regeneration quadrant, where I can now get the benefit of overreaching. I can get the benefit of stressing. I can get the benefit of this place. So I'm going to work super hard. I'm going to be super focused. I'm going to read. I'm going to grow my business. I'm going to take on all the stress. But you know what? I'm going to give myself 30 minutes of self-care in the afternoon. I'm going to give myself a 30-minute window just to clear my mind so that when I come back, I'm performing in this ownership quadrant. And when I have consistency and intentionality and a system over time, my outcome is inevitable. My outcome is inevitable. You're either going to have a positive outcome, something you're striving for, or a negative outcome. That cannot be stopped. You can't control the outcome. You control the middle. We all have a desire. Everybody starts, but champions finish. And the difference between what's normal and a champion is your system. And so as we start to think about this, what does this have to do with our life? We talk about a life by design or a life by default. A life by design is something that you intentionally and consistently put together. A life by default is how the rest of the world operates. People who are not in this room. It's what everybody else abides by. It's what everybody else seeks. And so I want to go through 3 signs of default, and we'll see where it is that we're at. So number 1, our bodies don't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. You see, there's a certain capacity that every single one of us has in our cup of life, if you will. You see this one on the side, this life by default. Both faucets are throwing mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress into this cup. But this one, this system just has 2 holes in this cup. And so we have years or moments or seasons in our life where there's a dribble, and then we have seasons where it's an onslaught. I'm trying to figure out my purpose. I'm trying to get fit. My in-laws are coming to stay with me for a month. I'm moving. My business is thriving. My business isn't operating. I'm scaling at a high level. There's always going to be stress inputs. We're always going to be asked to elevate and be here. But when you don't have holes in your cup, and a system, habits, behaviors, and lifestyle, you don't have a way for it to drain, and the only option is for it to overflow. A life by design, you have a greater capacity. Why? You have more holes in your cup. You have more for it to flow and not overflow. And that's the difference between people who operate at a high level and people who are constantly seeking. There was a study done by Holmes and Rahi back in 2004. And they took 250,000 people and started to ask these different questions. What you're going to notice here, and I want you to scan this little assessment. If you scan this QR code, you're going to pop open to exactly that sheet that I had before. And there's 43 different life events. So I'm going to just talk you through some stuff here as you take this assessment. There's 43 different life events. And these 43 different life events are positive and negative, real and perceived, mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And so as you go through this, just enter in your name, get that stuff in, and it's just going to be yes or no answers. In the last year, have you experienced any of these things? Have you experienced divorce? Have you experienced death of a close friend? Have you experienced a new pregnancy? Have you gotten married? Have you gone on vacation? Have you moved? Have you graduated school? Has a son or daughter graduated school? Are you going on vacation, seeing more of your in-laws? Are you having a major holiday? You notice that these things are positive, negative, real, perceived, positive, or mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stressors. The uniqueness here is that our body does not know the difference between any of these. But at the end of the day, they're all water coming into our cup. Our body has to adapt to them. Our body has to ultimately adjust.
When it says marriage, does it mean
You got married. You got married in the last year. You got married in the last year.
I get married with her every day?
I love that. But you don't have to plan something every day. As you guys finish this, you're going to get a number. I want you to call out the number, please. As you get close to the end, you're going to get numbers. Just call them out. I'll take 10. I'll write them down. Yeah.
So are all these within the last year?
All these within the last year. Yep, last year. Last year. And the uniqueness about this is that our body is constantly having to adapt, constantly taking on stressors, constantly having to write checks that our body may or may not have in cash. As we get to the end, you'll get one number. As everyone gets there, just holler it out.
How many times can you choose business readjustment? I'm just asking for rough.
And it's unique. As entrepreneurs, business owners. 147? 147, awesome. Anybody else? Slowly start to finish out here. 321.
That's good.
Yeah. There's no good or bad.
Good or bad?
It just is. It's just numbers. Remember, it's just like an outcome. You could win or you lose. It's not good or it's just bad. It's a process in which we get there. It's what do we do with it? 291. 119. 261. 532. Sorry? 527. 304. 411.
Minor violations of the law.
What do you consider minor?
234.
And is it a conviction?
Based off that story last night, if that was like at the same timeline, that would be appropriate.
521.
521. Okay,
530.
530. All right, we'll stop there. So if we take a look at this, I've done this with over 5,000 people now. This is the average, 274. Mine, I did it last night, was 261. What Holmes and Strahe found was after doing this with 250,000 people, they came within 2% reliability of being able to notice health degradation, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional individuals. What they found was 150 points or less had a relatively low amount of life change or life stress that would cause health degradation. 150 to 300 points, a 50% chance of health breakdown, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, in the next 2 years. 100 points or more, an 80% chance of health breakdown, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, in the next 2 years. This right here automatically gives us now a quantifiable metric to let us know, hey, you're taking on stress. There is a flow coming out of your faucet that your body is potentially struggling to maintain if you do not have those holes in the cup. And the outcome that you're going for is likely not one that you would want to choose. unless we change the middle. Unless we intentionally and consistently build a life by design. And this takes us to sign number 2. You're living in a space of fake health, and I'm going to ask a question here in a second. But there's a couple of different things here. On the far right side, we got death and disease. This is when you're being treated for something. You've got diabetes, you've got cancer, you've got this massive amount of weight gain, you've had your stroke, you've got some type of chronic illness. On the far left side, you've got true health. And this might look different for everybody, but it probably looks something like this. You wake up in the morning, you put your clothes on, you get to the gym, you're full of energy, you're mentally clear, you come home, you get the kids off to school, you go, you get your to-dos done throughout the entire day, you've got constant energy. You come home at night, you take your kids to football practice, soccer practice, you connect deeply with your spouse, put your head on your pillow at night, sleep deeply, wake up, do it all again the next day. The problem is 90% of us live in this middle space, fake health. Get this, disease-free, but symptom-full. Symptoms that we normalize, symptoms that we justify. Brain fog, headaches, weight gain, irritability, overwhelm, gut issues. Goes on and on and on. Inability to sleep. That's what it looks like to be a mom. That's what it looks like to be a dad. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like to build 200% passive income. All lies. All lies. But the crazy part is the longer that we live in this fake health space, the faster your window begins to close when it thrusts you into death and disease. And all of a sudden, overnight, you're like, how did I get this? How did I get here? Friends, it's how you're living. It's the systems that you've developed. And many of us develop systems that are already pre-programmed for us to lose. They're already pre-programmed for us to have an inevitable outcome that we don't desire. And so the crazy part about this is as we start to step in, chronic stress, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, our body doesn't know the difference, creates chronic inflammation, creates chronic symptoms. Chronic symptoms we say are normal, we justify, and those chronic symptoms create chronic illness. And chronic illness is the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%. So you're telling me that 71% of deaths in the United States are all preventable. And that number actually goes to 83% when we start looking at entrepreneurs, business owners, and executives. Rises 12%. And it comes back to how are we living? It comes back to a purpose and intention. And number 3 is what island are you on? Where are you living? And the cool part of this is we get to choose. Are you living in Sacrifice Town? Sacrifice sleep to send that one last email? Sacrifice seeing your kids play their sport or a family gathering because you've got a business meeting? You sacrifice high quality meals or sacrifice your workouts because you have to get to the office or get to your emails or get to that business call? Or you're living in Averageville, where you're not at 200%, you're at 500% passive income. Your business is humming. You've got everything figured out on the business side. You've got everything figured out on the family side. But if you were to actually be honest with yourself, you're just like every other American. You're on pace for a 25% less life expectancy, but a 50 times cost on health expenditure. For the first time in human history, the American average lifespan of both male and female will see a 3-year decrease in a row. First time in human history. So don't tell me that our systems are working well. Don't tell me that we're living a life by design. Or lastly, are you an abundance island, where there's more than enough time, more than enough energy, more than enough resources to have a great thriving family and have healthy relationships, to have the passive income that you're looking for and the business that's operating at a high level, to have the health and energy and vitality that you're truly desiring. That life exists, but it all requires a different design. It all requires different consistency and intentionality. And so I want to talk to you about what does a life by design look like. And there's really 4 non-negotiables that I talk about that help us run our life like our business. Like if I was to come up to you and say, Mark, I've got a great investment for you. Amazing. It's incredible. It's going to give you a lot of ROI. It's going to be, it's going to come to you eventually, and it's going to be really exciting. I need $500,000 today. What are you saying? Yeah, for sure. Like, show me the numbers, man. Show me the data. If all of a sudden, Sharon, I came to you and I said, hey, I've got this amazing marketing piece. It is going to 10x your brand. 15x your brand. I don't like that. 15x your brand. It's going to take 400,000 and it's going to show a lot of results for you. What would you say? Show me the numbers. We do this in our businesses. We ask for the numbers. We want to see the click rates. We want to see the retention rates. We want to see the ROI. We want to see the payback numbers. We want to see the time durations. But we don't run our bodies this way. We don't run our bodies this way. If I was to ask everybody in this room, and just call it out, what's the one thing that means the absolute most to you? Just shout it out. Your health. What else? Family. Faith. Anything else? It's great. I usually get those three. Fourth is usually maybe kids if you separate it from family. If I was to take your family away from you, if I was to take your health away from you, if I was to take your faith away from you, what are you giving to get it back? Anything and everything. Again, I've done this over 100 times, the same exact answers. So you're telling me that you already have everything you need. So why are we not managing it better? Why are we not taking a stand and setting a standard of living a life design that's consistent and intentional so that we already know what the outcome is? We already know we're going to have energy. We already know we're going to live vibrantly. We already know we're going to live different than everybody else. But we accept normal. We accept what the world tells us. We accept less than. But we've set a standard in our business. We've set a standard in how our family operates. We've set a standard that we don't accept anything less. But we ourselves accept less. And so there's 4 areas that I always come back to that are non-negotiables for me to start to say, hey, where are my health parameters at? Where am I at from a preventable standpoint so that I can ultimately get consistent and intentional and build a life by design that is focused on what I need, not what everybody else needs? Number 1 is heart rate variability. We'll get into what that's all about and what that is. And the reason HRV is number 1, because that is the gold standard. If any one of those other 3 changes in terms of how it operates and in terms of its benefits, HRV improves. Number 2 is blood glucose. Number 3, VO2 max. Number 4, micronutrient needs. And so when we talk about heart rate variability, let's skip over that. When we talk about heart rate variability, at the end of the day, it's a language. It's how our body is communicating to us. It's how well is it adapting to the stress and strain in which we're exposed to. How well are we adapting to the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress that's coming into our cup? How many holes do we have poked, and how well are those helping us to adapt to it? It's basically the daily KPI for health resilience. We have a KPI in every other facet of our lives, but we don't have a KPI for our health. And so if I was to come look at this and say, kind of give you a little deeper look to what heart rate variability is. When our heart beats, if we're adapting really, really positively to the stress that we're under, our body's like, oh, this is good. I'm loosey-goosey, nice and relaxed. Our heart doesn't beat in regulated motions. When we think our heart's rate is 60 beats per minute, we think, oh, 60 beats divided by 60 seconds is 1 beat per second. That's not how our body functions. Our heart only beats when it has to. And our one goal of our brain and our heart is to keep us alive. And so when we feel like we're adapted really well, when we feel like we've got capacity, those numbers are very sporadic, very random. 792, 600, 645. But all of a sudden, I don't know, Russ starts to think about the errors that might go on today. He starts to think about what's going on 5 10 10, 15, 20 minutes from now. He gets a text that lunch isn't going to be ready. He gets a text that we have to be out of here in 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, mental, emotional stress. His body, all it knows is, oh my gosh, something's going on with Russ. I have to keep him alive. Those numbers go to 792, 797, 801. Much more regulated. And so if we see a trend on a week or monthly basis that's increasing, it means we have a greater adaptation to the stressors and the strains, meaning that our system is efficient. Our system has been built well. If we see a downward trend on a weekly or monthly basis, it's an alert that there is a lesser adaptation, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and thus we don't have enough holes in our cup for what it is that we're taking on. And over the course of time, our outcome is not going to be what we want.
So what's a good HRV?
Thank you for asking. Where can you find it? And there's your numbers. So where can you find it? If you got an Oura Ring, you got an Apple Watch, if you got a Whoop Band, if you got a Fitbit, they all have these numbers in them. They all have the ability to find it. Who has a Apple Watch here? So if you go to Apple, go to Apple Health, go to the bottom right area, browse, then click on heart, and then click on heart rate variability. And you're going to be able to find a week, a month, and a year trend. And if your trend line is upwards, it means you're adapting really well. If your trend line is downwards, it's another sign that you're not adapting well to the stressors and the strains. Now here's a question that was asked that we kind of come back to is, what are the middle ranges? Like, where should we be looking? If you're 45 years old and you don't have an HRV of 40 to 75, your body's communicating something to you. The systems that you have set up are not optimal. Now you pair that with another number, 300 or greater, 150 or 150 or greater, another sign that you might want to look at your system. You might want to change the system and how it's operating. Second is we come to blood glucose. What is blood glucose? It's another language. Our body has a language in how it communicates to us. So how is our body adapting to the food and the liquids you're putting in your body? I can only eat meat. I can't eat meat. I only eat fruit. I can't eat fruit. I only eat vegetables. I don't eat vegetables. I only eat after 9. I don't eat before 9. Oh my God. What do you need? What is your body asking? It's a daily KPI on how your body's adapting to these areas. Steady blood glucose is better. Where we have a steady number, slightly up, slightly down throughout the day, is better. It's less stress and strain on our body. Our body doesn't have to work as hard to digest our food. Our body doesn't have to work as hard to pull the nutrients from our gut into our cells for energy. Our body doesn't have to work as hard to stabilize the environment internally in our body. With the peaks and valleys, it's another stressor that our body has to ultimately manage. VO2 max. We had some people go through a VO2 max testing this morning with me. What is it? It's our body's language of how our body is ultimately operating from an oxygen efficiency standpoint. The higher the number, the more efficient our body is at utilizing oxygen. Why is that important? What's the one thing you can't live without? Oxygen. You can go without food for about 10 days. You can go without water for about 5 days. You can go without oxygen for less than 5 minutes before it creates an issue. And so the higher HRV is better, meaning that we're having a greater efficiency to how our body's utilizing oxygen. For men, we want to see 45 or greater. For women, we want to see 38 or greater. A lesser is an alert. Okay? Lesser is an alert. We had some people go through this morning. Here's some VO2 max numbers of fitness classifications, where you're at, good, average, better, best. I hope I didn't ask any permission, so hopefully this is a safe space. But Kim, I'll call you out. 59.4. Kim, how old are you? 44. Excellent. Elite. Highest level, right? So what that means is that When she's just sitting here at altitude, less stress on her body having to breathe. When she's walking outside, less stress, just maintaining life. When she's sleeping, probably taking less breaths per minute. She's probably able to get into deeper stages of sleep. When she's exercising and having to do daily things like picking up the groceries or carrying the kids or moving things around, less stress on her body. The tap isn't on as fast. Conversely, if Kim had a, let's even say a 30, it would be more stress on her body in order to do these daily things. And so all of a sudden that would be reflected in HRV with a lower HRV number. Do we start to see how these numbers start to help guide us and open our eyes and take our heads out of the sand to what we've just considered normal? It's not normal to go up the stairs and be exhausted. It's not normal to wake up in the morning and not be jumping out of bed mentally clear. It's not normal to ultimately have issues going to sleep at night. It's not normal to have to need a nap in the afternoon. It's not normal to have massive levels of brain fog and anxiety and overwhelm. And then number 4, micronutrient deficiency. It's the daily, or it's ultimately the KPI, the language of how our body is taking the raw materials, so the food that we take in, and get them into our cells. Our cells are ultimately what require us to have energy throughout the day. There's something in the cell called the mitochondria. It's like the engine that runs our body. How many people have started to hear like Peter Attia and David Sinclair and all these guys talk about longevity and like these peptides and all of these things that you can start to do to increase longevity? It all has to do with cellular health. But guess what, friends? You talk about peptides, this is a top of the pyramid thing. I don't care how many peptides you take. If your bottom systems suck, you've just basically spent a lot of money on a crappy oil change. And so how are we living? I know this is like a faith-based group, but well, it comes back, it's scriptural, it's biblical. Romans 12:1. How are you showing up and how are you living? Are we conforming to the ways of the world, or are we ultimately transforming our minds and living differently? It's not about what you do one time, it's what you do consistently. It's not about what you do today, it's about how you intentionally do things on a regular basis. And when we can ultimately know, we can ultimately create change. What gets measured gets managed. What gets tracked improves. Because it's at the front of our minds. It's at the forefront of what it is we're doing and where we're going. And so this comes into the second component of these areas. Like, okay, Justin, I get it. I want to live a life that's different. I want to build a life by design. I want to do something that's intentional. I want to be consistent. But what does this look like? Great question. I'm glad you asked. This is the inside of my friend's car. Whoa. This doesn't typically look like this. He went away to the Bahamas. His sister came down and had 2 kids. And I picked him up at the airport, and that's what it looked like when I got back. He's typically out there on Sundays, like meticulously in the air vents with like Q-tips. And when we opened this up, I wanted to take a picture because I was like, how many of us expect to operate like a Lamborghini? How many of us expect to operate like a luxury vehicle that is clean, that is just crushing it? But this is what the inside of our body looks like, and we are so oblivious to this. And so we come into these areas. There are 8 foundational principles I want you to think about. 8 foundational principles that can ultimately build a life by design. And when I go through these habits, I don't need you to do all of them. I need you to do one. I need you to start somewhere. I need you to take one step forward and develop new habits. I need you to take one step forward and develop new habits. We highly overestimate what we can get done in 6 months, but we highly underestimate what we can get done in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, how much journey we can go on. You want to talk to anybody about this? Ask Sharon. Can I use you an example? When Sharon first came to us, he had just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes came on late onset to Sharon, not because that's what his destiny was predisposed to, but ultimately because that's how his body broke because of the season of stress that he put himself under. He was on 3 different types of medications, unable to control insulin, gaining weight, frustrated, fatigued, tired, overwhelmed, all of these things. Sharon now doesn't wear a blood glucose monitor. Sharon now has a deep understanding because he lives differently. Sharon is no longer on all the medications. He's on 2 and a fraction of what he was using because he simply changed how he was living. So when you come and you take a look at this, the habits, okay? Workout is completed 2 hours before bedtime. Are you ultimately just pushing your workout later in the night and then it's impacting how you're sleeping? 30 minutes of intentional, undistracted training throughout every single day. 90 minutes of zone 2 conditioning throughout the week. Sprinting once a week. Moving every 90 minutes. Walk for 5 minutes after every meal. 10,000 steps a day. I don't care where it is that you start. I don't care where it is that you are. But these are the foundational habits that we should be leading into and developing around. Yes, we can do testing to get more specific. Yes, we can get some tools that build us out. But if we're not here, there's a gap. Mindset. 15 minutes of meditation or breath work per day. 15 minutes of learning-based reading per day. 15 minutes of reflection and journaling per day. 15 minutes of positive visualization. Do we have a mentor that we're connecting with 1 time per week? How are we developing our mind? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Our bodies don't know the difference between these stressors, and this is an area in which we can lean into. Prepare. Sleep. Do we have a consistent sleep and wake time? If we have a consistent sleep and wake time, we can automatically start to regulate hormones. 3 hours before bed, no major meals. If we start taking food in as we get closer to bedtime, we have 400 times more melatonin in our gut than is produced by our brain. We're not going to get the melatonin release we need. We're not going to get the depth of sleep we need. All of a sudden, 2 hours before bed, there's no more work, no more heavy decision making. We have a boundary, we have a standard, because we're preparing for the most important thing that we can be doing. We spend a third of our life sleeping, probably pretty important. 1 hour before bed, no blue light. 0 times we hit the snooze button. Do we seek light, heat, air, and water first thing in the morning? Do we have a morning routine? Set our environment to be dark and cold at night. Do we mouth tape at night? Do we create a parasympathetic routine for the last hour before bed? What does this look like for us? Yes, we can do testing. Yes, we have tools, but we need to set habits. Immune response. Do we have 100 minutes of heat exposure each week? This could be sauna. This could be hot tub. This could be steam room. This could be just walking outside in Florida in the summer. Cold exposure, 11 minutes a week. Is it a cool shower? Is it grabbing the hose? Is it stepping outside in Colorado on a February day? Immune protocol. Do we have tracking HRV so that we can ultimately take an immune supplement when we see a 3-day decrease? Do we have a multivitamin every morning? Do we get 20 minutes of direct contact with the ground to alkaline our body? Do we get 15 minutes of direct sunlight, preferably first at sunset and then at sunrise? How are we eating? What does this look like? Nutritionally, do we eat 3 hours after waking up? And do we stop eating 3 hours before bed? We talk about this intermittent fast. I see so many people push their window to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, man, I've got this massive headache. I can't focus. Well, friends, you're doing all these things throughout the day. You need fuel. And then they eat right up until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night and complain that they don't get a good night's sleep and then are tired in the morning. We've got this intermittent fasting thing backwards. We wake up at 6 a.m., we don't eat until 9, we go to bed at 10, we stop eating at 6, we add those 8 hours of sleeping to the 6 hours of fasting, we got a 14-10 without even trying. That's what a life by design looks like. The intentionality and consistency now can be done over the course of time so that your outcome is inevitable. Portion sizes, all equal to 1. Walk for 5 minutes after every meal. Do we focus on food order? Eating the protein, veggies, fats, and carbs in that order so that we can stabilize blood glucose. Self-care. Do we have 30 minutes of self-care per day? Do we have this window blocked? What does this look like? It's something you completely do for yourself. It's not serving others. It's not creating this space. It could be a 10-minute walk. It could be getting in a red light. For me, I love going and playing hockey. That's like my thing. So twice a week, I've got it blocked off on my calendar, 12 to 1. You can't have access to me. This is one of my most important meetings of the week for me, so that I can have the capacity to serve, the capacity to show up. And then environment. Do we watch the sunset at night? Do we wake up and see the sun first thing every morning? If you go to my Instagram, every single morning, wake up the sun, wake up the sun, wake up the sun. First thing I do. It could be at 9 o'clock in the morning. It could be at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I'm getting sunlight. Do we have a morning routine? Do we have a night routine? Do we connect with someone you have a deep relationship with? Do we engage in 5-10 second hugs a day? It's a great time to do it. Do we engage in a faith-based community weekly? Like, what does this look like for us in our environment? Because mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, our body doesn't know the difference. I give this story again, just like I did Sharon. He was a diabetic using 100 units of insulin a day, running a $2 billion company, traveling all over the world. He had a team that was suffering from burnout. All of these things had this massive issue. Average of 19. 3 months later, after creating a life by design, he has an average of 48 in HRV. The numbers will show us. The numbers will dictate us. This guy going from 100 units of insulin a day to 10 units of insulin a month over the course of the next 2 years. His pancreas magically turned back on. He's living a different life, and his outcome is different. And so when we talk about ownership, it's the intersection point between responsibility and accountability. The intersection point of responsibility and accountability. Because we can't simply show up and expect an outcome. We have to prepare. And you might be looking at everything I just talked about, and you might be like, oh my gosh, Justin, this is so overwhelming. I don't know how I could do this. You start with one thing. And what does it mean to prepare? It's a little acronym. You can remember this off. Purposeful priorities. Not everything on there is a priority for you. You might eat really well, but you know what? You sleep like garbage. You might sleep really well, but you don't take any time for yourself. You might have a really great self-care routine, but your nutrition is off. Where is your priority? Where does that level of focus have to go to create a new life by design? Secondly, it's replace. I don't want you to be like the rest of the world. I don't want you to have a laundry list of 50 things to do throughout the day. I don't want you to keep adding these things. I want you to identify what's going on in your life, what habits, behaviors you currently have that are no longer serving you, that got you to the level that you are, but are not going to get you to the level that you want to go to, and what are you going to replace? E is expend. You're going to have to expend time, you're going to have to expend energy, you're going to have to expend resources. It might be a combination of all three, it might be all three. It might just be one. But what does that look like for you? To be able to step in and actually create change. Because remember, everybody has the desire to change. Everybody can start, but champions finish. And how are we building our capacity to do what it is that we want? The other P, persistent practice. It's not about doing something once. It's about creating a system that allows you to continue to come back and come back and come back day after day after day. Love the mundane. Love the process. Love the system. Love where you're going. Because when you do that, the outcome is inevitable. I often say there's only 4 mindsets. Impossible, possible, probable, or inevitable. And everybody in this room should abide by one. Inevitable. I only hang out with people with inevitable mindsets. Why? Because the outcome is inevitable. I might not win today, but I'll sure as heck win tomorrow. Every single time Bryce Harper steps into that batter's box, do you think he's going to strike out? No, he's like, I'm going yard every single time. But he only is successful 33% of the time. But you sure as hell know he's stepping into that batter's box every single time. He's like, this thing's going out. It's inevitable. He's done the reps. He's done the practice. He's been consistent and intentional, and you know you're going to win. How many people have a business that they know is going to win? It's taken some hits. It's taken some lumps. It's taken some slow ways to get going. It's taken a little bit of time. But man, it's inevitable that that thing's going to take off like a rocket ship, and it's going to do what you have because you know that you've got a process and a system that you're following. The same thing here. A, accept accountability. We know that habits and behaviors, they become more sustainable, they become more long-term when we do things in a community, when we have somebody to hold us accountable, when we have a coach that can speak into us, when we have an advisor that can speak into us, when we have a guide that can take time and collapse it. Accept accountability. Know that it's not a judgment of who you are if you're failing, but rather just a judgment of your system. Reassess and refine. This is often something that we forget. We're so busy doing, so busy taking steps after steps after steps that we don't allow ourselves to rest. We don't allow ourselves to say, hey, how is my system operating? Is it working well for me or is it not working well for me? Where do I need to create some change? Where do I need to make an adjustment? Where do I need to make a slight refine to what it is we're doing so that I can continue to step forward. I can continue to create new systems, continue to iterate on what is working and get rid of what is not. And then lastly, E, friends, I cannot tell you how important this is to sustainability. Expect. Expect the outcome. Expect the outcome. Because it's inevitable. It's inevitable when your system is intentional and consistent. Would you ever start a business that you didn't expect to win? Would you ever invest in something that you didn't expect to see an ROI on? Would you ever marry someone with the expectation of divorcing them? No. So why do we start something in our health journey without the expectation that we're going to see it through? Without the expectation that we're going to win? Because at the end of the day, when you sit in this, you've all been prepared for greatness. The calling's already there. It's not a question. It's not a question. It's just a matter of, are you willing to be consistent? Are you willing to put the time in? Are you willing to put the energy in? Are you willing to put the resources in? Are you willing to get uber consistent and uber intentional with building this new system, going from a life of default that the world has told you is normal, that you have ultimately been toiling in, going, I know there's something more. I know I'm built for more. I know there's more potential here. I know I'm meant to step up. I know I'm meant to win, but I can't take it anymore. This is how we do it. We live a life that's different. And we live a life that's by design. And it's available to you, but it requires you to choose different. Thank you.